Palace Square. This is the main square of our city, and this is even bigger than the Red Square in Moscow. Everybody knows the Red Square, so this is our own Red Square, but this is probably my favorite. Moscow, nothing personal, I love you, Moscow, but this is so grand. This is the city I love, and this is the city where the really super big parts of Russian history took place. Sure, you have seen this building. This is the Winter Palace, or it is also known as the Hermitage Museum. So this is 18th century, mid-18th century Russian Baroque style. So Baroque, you know, it comes from the French word, something bizarre, something unusual or peculiar. There is this funny word. So this is the word. This is all about it. It was built here to house the court of Russian Empress Elizabeth. You see all these sculptures all along the perimeter of the roof. Well, it is here, well, yes, to make it prettier and also to distract you, to disguise the chimneys behind the sculptures. Why? Because this is the Winter Palace and it's super cold here in winters. So I want to introduce you to Emperor Peter the Great. Can you see that? We have also one more cameraman, so Alexander, I'm also showing to you. Okay, so St. Petersburg is the city founded in 1703 by Emperor Peter the Great. 1703 is like already 18th century. So everything you see here, it didn't look like this during Peter's times. In fact, there wasn't nothing here. It was just a square, like flat land, and also lots of woods and swamps. Because all these lands, like the whole city lies on swamps. And also it's like really, it used to be uninhabited state at all. Like there were a few villages here. These lands used to belong to Sweden back then. And to be able to get these lands to Russia, Peter the Great initiated the war. So the war started in 1700 and lasted for 21 years. But in 1703, as I told you, 3 years after the war started, Peter managed to get the very first land. It's just to that side where the Peter and Paul fortress is, and but there was still nothing. And then Peter decided to build a small winter palace for him to live there in winter. And it's not here any longer. It's just over there. A little bit of that is within the Hermitage Museum complex. And this is already after Peter with his daughter Elizabeth. Okay, so 1762, so this palace was built. And Elizabeth didn't have a chance to live here at all. She died the same year. So what happened? You know, Empress Catherine the Great, the great empress who ruled for 34 years, like the longest period for Russian empresses. So this is her. She was the one to live here. She was the one to house her collection of works of art here. And then she was growing, the collection was growing. She was also growing bigger a little bit. Okay, and this is where the Hermitage as a museum was founded. So thanks to Empress Catherine the Great, we have Hermitage Museum, which is there. This is there. So thanks to Catherine the Great, what do we have? The Academy of Fine Arts, also the exploration of Russia, especially to the north, and also lots of victories in wars, and like I'm sure you all know about the Crimea, so this Crimea issue. And for the first time in Russian history, Crimea was next to Russia thanks to Catherine the Great. Hermitage Museum is one of the biggest museums in the world that houses, like 3,100,000 exhibits. Here in this museum, you can see Leonardo, Raffaello, and many other. That's one Caravaggio. It's like a big deal. And we have 2 Leonardos. It's like a big deal. And lots, like all the big names, and almost all the big names you can find here. We also have 20-something works by Rembrandt, which is the biggest collection of Rembrandt outside Holland. So that's a big deal. It's all there. But if you want to check out the Impressionist collection or the world's 20th century art collection, that's where you should go. Could you please turn your cameras to there? Okay, so this building now behind my back of a yellow color is a bit younger than the Winter Palace, and it does look different because this is already not the Baroque, this is the Empire style. Other than France, obviously, it's because this is the style that only lived for a limited period of time after the Napoleonic invasions. And well, you know that Paris was rebuilt significantly, and lots of the city was really reshaped and rebuilt, and you cannot see a lot of empire there. But Russia, well, it's always welcomed foreigners, visitors from all over, and France, well, the French were like really super welcome here. That's why lots of empire, from the architecture, from the objects of interior, everything was brought to Russia. So if you are a collector, then, and if you are interested in works of art and collection art, that's if you're interested in empire style, like 19th century, early 19th century art, then it's definitely where you should come, to St. Petersburg. You'll find lots of empire here. So I want to show you Emperor Alexander I, how he looked like, because he is the one who defeated Napoleon together with the allies, obviously. So Alexander I was the cherished grandson of Empress Catherine the Great, so the one who founded Hermitage as a museum and also did lots of other things. So he was the apple of her eye. He was named after Alexander the Great, so that one Alexander. And well, he actually, well, pretty much proved his name. So this column is really big and important because, well, it's called Alexander column. It is here to commemorate his victory over France, over Napoleon. So it's a single piece of stone, and it weighs about 700,000 kilograms. Can you imagine this whole this weight just stands there? It's not fixed to the ground, it's not cemented, there's nothing there, it's just it. And on the top there is an angel over there, and they say that the angel has the face of Alexander I, so that Alexander I. The architect who put it up straight is actually the same architect who who built the St. Isaac's Cathedral. And you see that golden dome over there? So this is St. Isaac's Cathedral. The same architect, Auguste Montferrand, he put the whole column up straight. It took him less than 2 hours to do that. Muya, and this is the water that is kind of naturally dirty, and it means like dirty, like swampy. I told you that the whole city is actually on the swampy grounds, and so we're not surprised to have these waters like this here. Moika River is really important, significant in St. Petersburg history. It's the river over which the very first permanent metal bridges appeared. And this is one of the bridges, it's one of my favorite bridges for sure over Moika River. It's called Pevchesky Most, or the Capella Bridge, or the Choir Bridge, and I'm gonna tell you why as we move there to that side. So we should cross. So this really beautiful building is the choir building. We call it Capella. So this is the building for the choir. Choirs, the tradition of choirs and court choirs is very old. It goes back to Moscow times, to the Tsar times. Because when we talk of St. Petersburg, we're talking about the empire, and the very first emperor was Peter the Great. And when we speak of Moscow, it's all about the Tsar times. And there wasn't any Petersburg back then. Like Moscow was like 1,000 years old, and this city is just a baby, so like a bit more than 300 years. So on one occasion there was a young choir boy. His last name was Razumovsky, and Empress Elizabeth, the one who had 3,000 people of her court, the daughter of the founding father of the city, fell in love with the boy, and he would become her her soulmate and her boyfriend, like secret boyfriend. Some say that they might have secretly got married in Moscow, and they might even have a baby. Like, we will never know. Obviously, we are not to know. But anyway, this is the truth. So there is this thing love. There is no need to care about the social status. He was just a choir boy, and she was just an empress. Like, why not? Let's hit it off. Over there, you can see the canal. It's called Zimnya Kanavka, or Winter Canal, building number 12. Every school kid in Russia actually knows this address and knows with whom this building is connected. If you've been following me, then you definitely know who this man is. Or if you're just interested in Russian history, well, you cannot but know this name. So this is Alexander Pushkin. This is the Russian poet number one. Has always been and will always be, for sure. St. Palace Square, and you want to see, for example, Nevsky Avenue, or you want to see the Spielblatt Cathedral, so going through the Dvary Kapela, through the Kapela yards, it's probably the best way. It's quiet, then you go really local, and it's quick. So we are on our way to Spielblatt Cathedral. I think every local, and maybe even to every kid, because this is the church where our poet Alexander Pushkin, well, there was a mourning service here. He was killed at a duel, and everybody could come here and say goodbye to him here in this church. And the whole town came to say goodbye to the son of Russian poetry. 61 people were set free, and they didn't know what to do with the freedom. So what happened? Obviously, there was a long chain of reforms that preceded the whole thing, and there will be some other reforms as well. So people were set free. Obviously, they needed land, but the land was given to them, well, not for free. There was a loan from a bank with an interest rate like less than 2%. For generations were told what to do, and they didn't know how to take care of their own lives, let alone just returning money to the bank. So many people just decided to return the land, so return the money to the bank and go to big cities. Well, most of those people, they were illiterate, they couldn't write, they couldn't read, and so what kind of jobs could they find here? Well, just mop the floors, clean the streets. Obviously, like, well, young ladies, like, they were turned to prostitution. Like, people were not happy with this. People were not happy, and this was, boiling and simmering. People were not happy, and during this time, from 1861 to 1881, when assassination happened, because I already told you about this, there were several attempts, like 6 attempts to kill the emperor. So the revolutionaries thought that, like, if they kill the emperor, it would solve the whole problem. So this is one of the most beautiful churches in the world, Orthodox churches. You can see lots of mosaic works here, apart from the golden domes, obviously. So this church has 7,060 square meters of mosaic from the inside and outside. We're at the St. Basil Cathedral in Moscow, and you're quite right, but I'm going to tell Palace and the Hermitage Museum. It wasn't a museum back then, obviously, but anyway, if you are in Hermitage someday, maybe some of you have been there, and if you go to the part with the private rooms of the Winter Palace, not every tourist is taken there. If you're with a guided tour, when you're on your own, just make sure you go there and you check the room where Alexander II died. The task was to make the church that commemorated the event, like the very sad event. It was supposed to look like the traditional Russian churches of times before Peter the Great, because Alexander III, this emperor, considered that all those liberal views and revolutionary views, they were all, they just came from the West, from Europe, and we had to again get back, return to our roots, to the Slavic root. And I would like to show you the portrait of Alexander III, the next emperor. This is him. He is often referred to as the Russian bear on the throne, he was big. He was like he was also considered and often called Alexander the Peacemaker, because during his rule Russia didn't take part in any military action. So he was really peaceful, very traditional, and obviously was keeping the country with the ruling the country with the iron fist. And he definitely tightened lots of screws that Alexander II at his earliest of his career had actually let loose a little bit. So there was a revolution and the Russian Empire collapsed. And we had the new country established a bit afterwards, the Soviet Union. And I'm sure everybody knows that St. Petersburg was actually called Leningrad. It was named after the head of the revolution, so Vladimir Lenin. And you all know about the siege of Leningrad. So it's all really tightly connected with this building. So first of all, Soviet Union was an atheistic state, and I'm sure you know that. And lots of churches all across the country were actually destroyed. And if the church is standing on its place now, you can consider it super lucky. But it wasn't a church back then. It was turned to some other building, be it like a warehouse or a gym or anything else, like an I don't know, like a workshop or something. So this church was used to store some specs from the theater not far from here, and it was also closed. And there were 3 attempts to actually blow the church up, but something would pop up every time, and it's still here. The city was encircled for a bit less than like 3 winters. This church was used as a morgue. So people died in the streets of hunger because of the bombs. So these people didn't fight at war. So they were within the besieged city. So people died and the whole ground was covered with frost. It was impossible to bury people. There were also former brick factories that were changed into into huge crematorium and huge kilns to actually burn the bodies. So the bodies were stored there. They were just lying in piles, and due to the proximity to water, the church actually looked like it was a giant fridge. Church is built over the place where the blood was spilled, and inside the church you have a canopy. And there you can find a small piece of cobblestone and the embankment and also the railing where the whole thing happened. So to be able to build the church over that part of embankment where the assassination happened and the blood was actually spilled, it's not just figure of speech, the blood was spilled there. They had to build the church inside the canal. So they used huge keystone boxes to pump out the water from there, and they had to secure the grounds with like 11,000 tarred pine tree piles. Can you imagine that? So it was like a huge work, and they had to use lots of state-of-the-art technologies to actually make it happen, but they did. So it took a bit more than 20 years to build the church, and after the Second World War, after the neglection of the Soviet period, it took more than 50 years to restore the church. It was this building, like a Russian museum, the Russian collection. It was all as a reaction to what happened to the assassination and to the murder of Alexander II. So it was all about the Russian traditions, Russian roots, and Russian art, all gathered in one place. So it's there if you want to see and to trace back the history of Russian fine arts from the very beginning, from the icon painting and like Russian icons is a big deal. Like people who know, they know. Like it's something like very valuable and collected by, be careful, like collected by the people from all over the world. It's like really worth millions. So you can see there the Russian icons, and you can trace the whole history of Russian fine arts from Kandinsky, one of the most expensive artists in the world, and lots of other Soviet art, and even already like the post-Soviet art. It's all there. So most popular, and this building is also important to us because it has its big spot in Russian history and Soviet history. This is there where the famous Siege Symphony by Dmitri Shostakovich was performed. Like the people were living in the besieged city without electricity, running water and central heating, but people survived. People had to go to work. I mean, those who stayed in the besieged city, kids had to go to school, and people were still writing books, doing paintings, and performing music, composing music. And people came there, the whole lights were turned off because, well, the Russian army didn't want it to be too obvious for the Nazi aviation. And it was also like not streamed, but it was broadcasted to the radio, and there were megaphones everywhere in the downtown, so people could actually hear it in the outside. Oh, this is the church where the icon of Our Lady obtained in Kazan. The copy of it is housed. So just like again, one step at a time. So Kazan is the town in Tatarstan. It's actually now within the Russian Federation. Definitely a must to visit. Really beautiful. It's different from Moscow, different from Saint Petersburg and all other Russian countries. Really beautiful, very popular tourist destination. Hope it will be. So there was this history actually takes us back to the Moscow times, really old times. And I want to show you this man. I'm sure some of you can recognize him. This is Ivan the Terrible, Russian Tsar. So it's like Moscow times. Yes. Well, he was terrible for many reasons. Like one of them is that, well, he allegedly, in the fit of anger, might have killed his own son. But there were many other things that he did, like terrible things. And he also had a few trust issues. And, well, he was trying to eliminate people who thought differently or who might have been plotting something against him. So he initiated the campaign against the town of Kazan, and he nearly burnt it to ashes. And there was one girl in Tatarstan, in Kazan, who kept seeing one dream, like a saint came to her, like an angel came to her, taking her to a place where an icon would be found. So the girl would wake up, would tell people to go and check it out. People wouldn't believe her, but finally there was those who trusted. They came to the ruins because the town was nearly burnt, and they found the icon exactly where an angel was showing it in a dream. And the icon was immediately proclaimed the miracle-working icon. There was made copies of it, and one of the copies is in this church. So once you're in Kazan Cathedral, it doesn't have the official status of a museum, so it's free to go inside to check it out. And most probably once you're there, you'll see long line of people. They're all there waiting for their turn to pray to the icon, press their forehead and kiss the icon. So there might be a resemblance with it. You're quite right, because the architect who built the church, again, like many cases in St. Petersburg, he wasn't European, he was Russian, but he went to study in Europe. He studied architecture, and that's where he learned how to build like European style. The church is smaller and it doesn't have a second colonnade, but this colonnade, all of this is the brainchild of Andrei Voronikhin, Russian architect. He was very young when he was given the project, and he had many people who disapproved of this work. They thought he was just a wannabe from nowhere, from the former serfs, but that's what he did. He was like in his 20s, mid-20s, when he started the project. Thank Alexander. Could you please show Alexander, my colleague, for his work, for his desire to help. And I'd like to thank my cameraman, who is also happens to be my husband and a colleague.